to part 2 of my Dogman episode. In the first part, we talked about the different types of Dogman and their descriptions. We also talked about the origin of Dogman and some of the telltale signs of a Dogman encounter. But in this part, we're going to read some encounter sightings reported on the internet, and then we're going to talk about the Beast of Bray Road, since it's such a similar item in its description and its behaviors. Figured this would be a good opportunity to talk about it in a way that relates to the other things that we're discussing. So across the internet, there are hundreds and thousands of sightings of dogmen in the United States. As I talked about in the first episode, they started in Michigan and kind of just spread out throughout the entire country. And today, there is a sighting in almost every state in the United States, which is crazy. But one of the ones I would like to talk to you guys about is actually from New Hampshire, which is crazy. I live in New Hampshire. I love New Hampshire. We don't have a lot of cryptids here. We have like wood devils, which we'll talk about at another time, and puckwudgies, which we'll also talk about at another time. And New Hampshire has more alien abductions and alien sightings, and like ghostly things, which I love. It's like I'm a big fan of everything supernatural, from the paranormal to extraterrestrials. I love it all. But in New Hampshire, we don't really have a lot of cryptids, at least not super well-known ones. So it's interesting and super cool to me to find that there was a sighting of Dogman in New Hampshire. And this story is from June of 2017. So we're gonna read that. It's neat. That's pretty recent. 3 years ago is not that long. So I'm gonna read that one to you guys first, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. June 1st, 2017, 11:30 p.m. I was going through the hiking trails with my dog behind my town's local high school fairly late one night. I had gone there plenty of times before since I was young, so I wasn't frightened. While I was walking my dog, he kept trying to stop and was whimpering, which was strange because he is normally a very brave dog. After walking for about 10 minutes longer, I heard huge branches crashing and breaking. That's when I started to become frightened and decided to turn back. While walking back, I could tell that something was following me. I was terrified. Suddenly, after a minute of calmness, this creature leapt in front of me across the trail. This creature had long, dark fur and was enormous. It wasn't a bear. It was like a very muscular, huge wolf. After seeing this, I picked up my dog and sprinted off the trail without seeing it again. This was easily one of the most terrifying nights of my life. So that is from New Hampshire. It's from one of the more northern counties in New Hampshire. And it's super interesting because, from what I gathered, it's like it was pretty close proximity. It was like a couple feet up the trail. You can see it pretty well. Granted, it's kind of dark, but when you grow up in an area that is like known to have bears, known to have moose, known to have all of these different like giant creatures, you get really good at being able to tell, like, obviously I know that wasn't a bear because I've grown up seeing them, or obviously it wasn't a moose because I know what moose look like. So it's just super interesting to be like a New Hampshire native and be like, I am like certain that wasn't a bear. I'm certain it wasn't this. Like, it was definitely this large wolf-like creature that chased me through the woods. And honestly, like, I go up into the woods a lot all the time. This past weekend I went up north with my roommates, and one of these days I'm sure we're gonna run into something weird up there. Granted, there's a lot of weird stuff up in northern New Hampshire in general, but it would be really cool to run into something like that. It would be terrifying. I said this in my first video. I would be really scared if I ran into a dogman. And I still think that to be true. But I do also think it would probably be really cool. Like, in hindsight, like 20 years later, when I'm like finally over it and like have accepted and like made peace with it, I'd be like, all right, yeah, no, that was kind of cool. In the meantime, I'd be like, that was scary, I didn't like it. Okay, so I'm gonna read another encounter to you guys. This one comes from Idaho, and it was reported in 2008, so a little bit further away than the last one. But it's interesting that it's coming from Idaho. and I'm going to read it and then we can talk about it. I saw a dog man walking along the green belt in Boise, Idaho, and to be more specific, the area would be Garden City. The actual location on the greenbelt would be the area of the greenbelt that is on the other side of Veterans Parkway Bridge. For those not familiar with the area, the Boise River flows through downtown Boise and Garden City. The greenbelt is a walking, biking pathway that is paved that goes right next to the river. It was 3:15 a.m. in February 2008, and I was scraping the ice off my car window. I had to be at work at 4 a.m. I realized that it was eerily quiet. I looked up and I saw it walking along the greenbelt going towards the Veterans Parkway Bridge. The bridge goes over the Boise River and the greenbelt pathway goes under the bridge. It was tall, I would guess over 7 feet. It turned its head and looked at me. It had green neon-colored glowing eyes. I said out loud, "Oh my God." It turned its head back and continued walking along the greenbelt. I was walking slowly. I was frozen with fear and didn't move until I saw it vanish behind the building that is next to the Veterans Parkway Bridge. I assumed that it continued along the greenbelt under the bridge. It had dark brown fur all over its body, pointed ears, long snout, weird legs, and tail. I got a pretty good look at it. That section of the greenbelt is at the end of a dead-end street and has a couple of businesses there with parking lots that are lit up with all street lights. I only saw it that one time. So that one's pretty interesting because, you know, it fits the description of Dogman to a T. And personally, like based on its behavior, if you watched my first video, you'll know a little bit more of what I'm talking about. I think it was probably a type 3 Dogman, considering it wasn't super aggressive and I just kind of looked at them. Like I said in the first one, not to say that those ones are not aggressive, but it's kind of been like based on the sightings and the way people have described their behavior, it's kind of been figured out that the canine type is more likely to attack you and more likely to be aggressive towards you, whereas the type 3 doesn't not exhibit those same characteristics, but is a little more lax. So based on that, I would assume that that was probably a type 3, given the description too. What I think is interesting about that though is the tail, because in some of like the artist illustrations and the different like descriptions that we've seen of type 3 dogmen, they're not really usually known to have a tail, whereas like the canine type would. So all in all, it's just super interesting. Like that is a sighting that I think if I saw it in that context, I would be probably way less scared. Like I would definitely be scared, but like if it wasn't attacking me, I'd be like, okay, well maybe, you know, that was scary, but not as bad. So that's really cool. Like I really like that one. And it's like, it's cool that this person got like a very, very, very clear image of it and like a very clear sighting of this creature just like walking along this path. Like that's really neat to me and I really like it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Beast of Bray Road. This creature is local to southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois. The reason I'm bringing this into it is because physically and behaviorally, the Beast of Bray Road is like almost a perfect match to Dogman. And I think like because it was like an isolated place, and because the Dogman sightings didn't gain traction and start becoming a more known phenomena until, you know, like the late 1900s, a lot of people just like didn't know that there was like another creature going around that like could have possibly been the same thing, or it could have been you know, like a hybrid of this creature and something else or whatever. Okay, so the Beast of Bray Road had its first like official sighting in 1936 in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and from there on it kind of like jumped counties. So you know, it went kind of quiet for a couple years. Which, you know, it may have been out and about, people may have been seeing it, just not said anything about it, but you know, it'd be like that. So for a couple decades, it kind of just wasn't really reported as much, and then in the 80s and 90s, sightings were popping up in different counties in the similar area to where it was first sighted, but it was kind of bouncing around all of these different zones, which is pretty interesting. Eyewitnesses of these sightings like have reported that its behavior is like very aggressive, like jumping on cars, chasing people, trying to like scare them, which is like super similar to like what a lot of people report for the canine type dogman, which is super interesting. And I'm gonna read you guys the description of this creature and show you a picture, and you're gonna see that it's like super similar to what is described when people are talking about dogman as well. So there are several descriptions to this. It's a bear-like creature, resembles Bigfoot, unusually large, 2 to 4 feet tall on all fours and 7 feet tall on 2 legs, weighs anywhere between 400 to 700 pounds, with brown-gray fur resembling a dog, shiny yellow eyes with pointed ears, and it's very intelligent. So as you can see, it's like very similar looking to what the dogman has been drawn up to look like and what the dogman has been seen to look like. So in my mind at least, I think it's probably like the same creature. A lot of people tried to write it off as like, oh, it could be this, it could be this. Wisconsin has its own like type of Bigfoot that they call the bluff monster, which keep an eye out because we'll do a video on that at some point too. So a lot of people were just like, oh, it's the bluff monster, it's fine, it's that thing. A lot of people thought that it was a Wendigo, which we'll talk about Wendigos in another video eventually because they are scary. I'm afraid of them. And some people wrote the sightings off as a wild dog or a bear with mange, which is interesting because I feel like a lot of like mammal cryptids, people will see them and be like, oh, well, that's just this creature with mange. And I think it's funny because like I'm sure a lot of it probably is that, like someone sees something weird and they're like, why is that bear looking creature acting strange and why does it look like that? And it's turns out to just be like a bear and it's having a bad time. But I do think that obviously not every single animal that we see has mange, so there has to be like some sort of other explanation as to why people are seeing these like crazy muscular werewolf creatures that are attacking their cars. I'm going to read an encounter from the Beast of Bray Road real quick. It is a little bit longer, but it's super interesting, so I'm going to read it to you guys and then we'll go from there. I lived in the town of Franklin, Wisconsin. This was about 1997 to 98. We had just moved into a brand new subdivision and were currently the only house that was built. The rest of the area for a long distance was empty lots on what used to be the adjoining farm's old land. Our backyard had a running creek. On the other side of the creek was some brush and a single-lane road with an old wooden streetlight that gave off an orange hue about 30 yards or so away. It was a warm summer night and I was having a sleepover with one of my friends. We had all the lights off and were playing hide and seek in the dark. I went back into our sunroom and saw something crouched over the illuminated through the brush and the orange streetlight. I'm not sure how to describe its body posture. You know how when you're about to throw up and you hunch over on your knees and palms? It was similar to that. Its breaths were so deep and heavy that you could see its chest heaving from that distance. We had a 140-pound Akita who stood 6 feet on his hind legs. I could easily tell that whatever this was dwarfed my Akita. I also know that it wasn't any type of dog or wolf. Its hind legs were thick and muscular, like a man's, but its body tapered at the abdomen and had like a wolf or canine. I called out to my friend who came over and just said, "What the is that?" to me, trying not to make much noise. We sat there as well as it hunched for a good 30 minutes. My dad, who was a hard-ass Vietnam vet, came out to see what the hell we were doing up so late. We asked what it was and he said, "I don't know." He then went outside as we stayed in, scared for my dad. He had one of those old mega lights that had the power of 1,000 candles and took it with him. He stood in the driveway and shined it on whatever we were watching. It looked back at us and I honestly don't remember its eye color. What I do remember is that when it took off into the brush, it took off upright like a sprinter from the on all fours stance. My dad heard it splash through the creek and hightailed it in. It was one of those crazy moments you don't really talk about because people will think you were crazy. When I heard about it so many years later, I immediately knew I'd seen it too. So that's crazy. Can you imagine like being a child just like playing outside and you like see this like crazy thing that's just like hunched over, like staring at you? I would be so scared. But also like I think a obviously it was traumatizing enough that this person like remembered that like story so freshly in their brain after all those years. But also like that's just crazy. I don't know. I think that's nuts. I really like it. I really thoroughly enjoy reading stories of people's encounters because I like putting myself in that situation and like seeing it with my own mind, you know? Like I like to like read it and be like, great, so I'm gonna mentally like prepare this image and just like kind of put myself there and read it. And I think it's really interesting, and I'm excited to read encounters like this because it's just like that's so cool. And like obviously I didn't try to hurt them, I just looked at them and was interested. I think like, and this could go for like a lot of animals too, is like a lot of them are generally pretty curious about like what we are and what we're doing, and like only become aggressive like when we start to interfere with their lives. You know, you get too close to like a mama bear's cubs, or like I can't think of any other examples of why an animal would come after you. Anyway, but I think it's interesting that it was more kind of just like observing them, and then when this person's father went out to check it out, that's when it kind of just like was like, I'm out of here. See you later. Yeah, so that's what I have for you guys for part 2 of my Dogman episode. If you want to see more encounters or more sightings like typed out, check the links in here because I put the same links in this description as I put in the first one. Dogmanencounters.com has a lot of very, very good encounters on there that you can read through, and they're super cool. And then as for the Beast of Bray Road, I'm pretty convinced that it's the same creature, honestly. Like, I really think it's probably just the same thing, like more of the same Dogman-like creature that's just made its way through these other places. So as far as I'm concerned, that's what it is. If you think otherwise, let me know though. Like, please leave me a comment, like let me know what you think. If you think it's a creature all on its own, or if you think it's part of the Dogman species. I just would love to hear everyone else's opinion. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And I have another video coming next week that I hope you guys will love. Again, thank you so much for watching. See you guys next time. Bye!